I wanted to share this clip by Dr. Otis Moss, who he calls it his 5 minutes. And I think it really speaks to historically what we're seeing happening right now during this time in our nation. So I'm going to ask you to review this, watch this, and then I'll come back and I'll make some comments afterwards.
I was contacted by the Minnesota Council of Churches. They were asking that ministries across the nation would say something about what is happening in Minneapolis, that the city is literally under siege. Very different than a Chicago or an LA or a New York because of the size of the city. They just deployed another 1,000 ICE officers, and families are scared. Wherever they go, they say you can see it, it's palatable. Children are scared going to school, and parents are scared about picking up their children. That they are even, as had a meeting with someone from the Minnesota Council of Churches, that they are even using drones looking into the windows of homes to find out if there is someone of color in those spaces. So I want to share this with you. In February of 1793, America passed what was called the Fugitive Slave Act, based upon race, biology, that if you saw someone who looked different, you had the right to detain, arrest, and return that person to their quote-unquote slave master. There was no due process, and there could be no interference by anyone around, or they would be fined. From 1793, then after the Civil War, the South introduced what were known as black codes. The black codes instituted two very important laws. One was called employment proof. Any black person walking through the South had to show their papers if someone white walked up to them and said, "Show me your ID." You had to pull out papers to say that I work for so-and-so. If you did not have your papers, you could then not only be placed in jail, but you would be forced into labor up to 8, 9, or 10 years working for a company without pay. That's right, it was called the jailhouse. That's right. And the vagrancy laws were the same space. Vagrancy laws said that where 3 black people walking together, if they did not have appropriate papers, could be placed in jail. In 1935, Nazi Germany passed the Nuremberg laws. After they studied the Fugitive Slave Act, the Black Codes, and Jim Crow laws, they put in place what is known as the Nuremberg laws, which created what we call the Gestapo, that you could go into spaces, and if a person did not have appropriate papers, you could detain them, jail them, exile them, or even worse. The terror in Minnesota from ICE officers should not be framed as German Gestapo, but as modern-day slave catchers. As a result of this administration's immoral, unethical, unchristlike behavior and the mediocre legal mind of Brett Kavanaugh, ICE has been empowered to stop, terrorize, detain, bully, and harm American citizens. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in the case of Noen versus Vasquez, shared that ICE officers only need reasonable suspicion to detain or arrest. He went on to say a person could be detained and arrested based on ethnicity, color, language, accent, or the type of work they do. In other words, racial profiling in Minnesota is under siege by slave catchers empowered by an immoral and unethical, corrupt, and predatory administration. ICE has become modern-day slave catchers, a force designed to terrorize families and to harm communities. People have died. and killed by ICE officers, and the federal government is currently preventing local law enforcement from investigating these deaths. As people who follow Jesus Christ, as descendants of ancestors who fought for abolition, against Jim Crow and every human indignity, it is our call and spiritual birthright to stand in solidarity with the people of Minneapolis. We as God's people are called to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And please know, salt always melts ice. We collectively call on Congress to do its job, to stand with moral clarity to protect all citizens in this nation. Always know that light chases away darkness. We stand with the people of Minneapolis and Minnesota. We resist the immoral, unethical action of ICE. We will not bow, we will not retreat, and we will not go gently into the night. We the people, we descendants of Harriet and Frederick, descendants of Ida and Du Bois, descendants of Fannie Lou and A. Philip Randolph, descendants of Martin and Malcolm, descendants of Fred Hampton and Angela Davis. We stand this day with spiritual authority. We shall not be moved. We will not be quiet. We will fight until freedom comes. The Spirit of the Lord is upon us to preach good news to the poor, to set at liberty the captives, and that is my 5 minutes. Peace.
So, hopefully you got a chance to watch that. It's about six and a half minutes long. But the reason I wanted to share that is because, first of all, it's very unfortunate that the churches of Minnesota had to ask pastors to talk about what's going on in Minnesota. But I have thought for quite some time now that with all of the hatred, the evil, the wickedness that we're seeing going on, that's happening in our nation right now, regardless to what ethnicity, every pastor in this country should be addressing this. And it's very disturbing that people think that you're radical when you even bring this up. And one thing that I have truly learned, that a lot of times the people that will label you as being radical about something, they're just not as informed as you are. Because for whatever reason, they're sheltered by what's really going on, because they're kind of in their own little circle and they're just trying to quote these nice little pretty scriptures that just says, let's just walk in love. Let's just get along. And, it's almost kind of like that Rodney King statement, you're getting the mess beat out of you. And the only thing you can say, can we just get along? No, there are times where you have to stand up for what is right. And it's just quite disturbing. I talked to my father earlier today, and he was just sharing with me about how, he's lived through a lot. My father's 89 years old, so he's lived through the civil rights movement. But to hear him say, I'm seeing something that I've really never seen before. And I understand what he's saying, but when I look at how Pastor Moss broke that down, what we're really seeing is the same thing we've seen before. Those of us who are old enough to remember that there have been people that walked through the street terrorizing people back in the 50s and 60s with hoods on, with their faces covered. Well, you have the same thing going on now. Masked men who really are not law enforcement, terrorizing people, actually killing people, sending people to jail without due process. This is very troubling. And if we say that we are truly followers of Jesus Christ, and if we think about what he did during his time here on earth, he dealt with the issues of the day. Oftentimes, he had to address religious leaders who were causing suffering and placing restriction on people and keeping people in bondage, which is why he addressed them saying, "Woe to you, you perverse generation. You are of your father, the devil." He was talking to religious people. And he was ministering to the lost, which is what we're called to do. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick through the power that he has invested in us. But we sit back too often and we say, God is in control. No, we are his vessels here in the earth. And if we don't begin to do what we're supposed to do, we can sit back all day long. A lot of this is not going to change. And for those who just may not be informed of what's really being said out there, on Monday, on the King holiday, I actually released a video that I only posted onto YouTube. And you feel free to research it if you want to. For those who are interested, for those who are not, no problem. But the title was "The Difference Between Good and Evil, Courage and Cowardice." Again, the difference between good and evil, courage and cowardice. If you're interested in seeing a lot of what's being said on both sides, I mean, there's some positive in there, but then there's some stuff that you would be surprised that people are saying from pulpits and what faith leaders are saying. So I just say to you, it's time for us to stand up. And as Dr. King often told us, it's always right. The time is always right to do what is right.